All right, well, welcome back to the CJ Show. I am Chris Elmore, your host, and I'm excited today because I have another friend on the show, someone that I met at Trans Rockies about 8 months ago and really got to get to know her and her husband, and it was a lot of fun because one thing I will say is if you suffer with someone, it's amazing how well you get to know someone. So her name is Vicki, and it's been fun getting to know her and her husband over the last 8 months. But to kick it off, just want to, if you're new to the show, remind you or let you know that I have my YouTube channel, which is CJ Media, and my Instagram as well. So a lot of videos there and other resources, and we can connect that way. But otherwise, we'll get right into it, and I'll introduce Vicki to you guys. How you doing, Vicki?
I'm great. How are you, Chris?
I am good. How's it down in San Diego, Coronado area?
Well, we're a little overcast today, but you know, the birds are out and the flowers are so beautiful and vibrant, and the grass is green, and it's way better than dry San Diego that we had how many months ago.
Yeah, and it looks like I don't know about down there, but up here, and I'm in Orange County, so like an hour and a half, 2 hours away, it's going to be like in the 80s in 3 or 4 days. It's going to be so hot this weekend. So
I'm looking forward to it.
Pool weather is what that sounds like.
Yes, definitely.
Well, I'll get into, like I said, I met you and your husband at Trans Rockies. I was out there for the race coming through the airport. And as I walked through the airport by a restaurant, with a backpack and shoes and carrying stuff, you actually, I think you said, "Hey, are you doing Trans Rockies?" And we just started chatting, and I sat down in this little restaurant with you, and pretty much the next 8 days we spent most of the time together.
Yeah, I actually saw you walk by the restaurant a couple of times, and I said to Mark, my husband, I'm like, that guy's got to be doing Trans Rockies, because who else has trail running shoes on the outside of their suitcase, looking around, kind of meandering. And of course, me being nosy, or some would say more outgoing, I had to reach out. And I swear, Chris, it feels like we've known each other way longer than 8 months. Like you said, spending time suffering together definitely brings out a whole lot of stories.
Yeah, I think it's funny to think about where, we started that day just kind of getting to know each other, but then we had a couple days before the race and we were doing meals and getting to know each other. But really, when you're waking up day after day and you're going through the highs and the lows of the race, it's hard to hide your real personality, and, suffering together and helping each other get through the race, I think creates a bond.
Yes, absolutely. I think, what was it, day 3, where I actually had to tell you to leave because I was sobbing. Very tough day for me because we were running downhill and my quads were hurting so bad. And I felt bad because I didn't want you to feel like you needed to nurture and be there with me. That was definitely Mark's job. But I was at the point where I didn't want anybody around. It's like, let me get through this.
Well, yeah, on day 1, we started out, and somehow, we knew each other at that point. We started out, and Mark was raring to go. And, you come out of Buena Vista. Yeah, Buena Vista, right? That's where we started. Yeah, you come out of Buena Vista, and it's just a climb. You're climbing. And I was of the mindset, I am taking it easy for the first couple of days to get through this before I jump into it. And running with you and chatting with you, it was perfect because I wasn't chasing anyone down, and we let Mark run up ahead of us, and then we would he'd wait for us, and yeah, so it was a blast.
It truly was. Coming down off of Hope Pass and doing that single track, going through those trees, I think that was the most blissful moment I had of the entire whole 6 days of running, just weaving in and out of the trees. And we had such a pace going, and then we picked up those other runners, and like Mark got in his run coaching mindset of, let's do a minute on, minute off. And it was just so spectacular. And I don't think I have felt that present in my body in a long time. It was really amazing.
Yeah. It's hard to think of anything else at that point. One, it's so beautiful, and there's suffering happening, but it's taking every ounce of energy to just keep progressing, especially at that point in the day where you've climbed. And that was one of the coolest things, was at the end of the day, kind of picking up these people that are walking and get them going with us. And yeah, you pretty soon you have this little group of people that you're carrying along with you. And Mark is definitely good at that.
Yeah. And, you know, I find that like in any sport that we do, whether it's a marathon or whether it's CrossFit, like if you just reach out to somebody else that you see as suffering, it takes your eyes off of you and you're able to just like virtual hug, envelop somebody else to help them get out of their mindset and help them move on. And then it's so much better for everyone. Yeah.
Well, I definitely say it's definitely helps you feel like you're suffering less when someone else is suffering more.
Yep.
And you're focused on helping them.
Definitely.
Otherwise, I'm sitting there counting my footsteps. I'm doing anything else I can to try and get my mind off of it.
Yeah, those mantras by day 5 were not working as effective as they were on day 2. It was like, but it was so spectacular. And seeing you after like you left us, I don't know, it was day 4 and you picked up some other runners, and seeing how well you were running and how much you were enjoying yourself just gave me just the excitement to, okay, where's Chris at? And, you know, and I bet Chris ran through this section and we're walking, and, you know, I bet Chris is just tackling this downhill. And it just kept like, okay, I can't wait to get to the finish line to see you and hear how well you did and your day.
Yeah, I remember, I don't remember if it was Camp Hale was that first day that I had left. Maybe that was the second day, whatever day it was, day 3 or 4 when we separated. I realized, you were having a hard time. And this was your and Mark's trip, right? So, I mean, we had a lot of fun together, but I realized, you know, if I go off the front a little bit and let you guys bond and get through it and enjoy. And I think Mark had kind of switched mindsets at that point. He was enjoying the race. And, yeah, I remember being at Camp Hale and you guys coming in and going and getting hamburgers for you. Mm-hmm. And hanging out, and I had already eaten and was hanging out, and it was perfect because I was ready to be there when you got there, and that was the best hamburger I've ever had in my life, I think.
Hamburger and the Sufferfest beer.
Yes, the Sufferfest beers were amazing.
Yes. Thank you for that. If I didn't thank you on that day.
Well, one thing I would say is that being at that race and spending all of that time, I got to know you really well and hear a lot of really cool stories. And that is what really one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on the show, was because you've kind of had this vast experience from fitness and CrossFit and Ironman. And what was really neat was to be there and be with you and Mark, and I don't know if you remember Mary, and all of you guys were Ironman Kona qualifying athletes, right? And I was never at that level, but I had retired from Ironman. There's no more Ironman for me at that point. And just being around you guys all week and talking to you about your experiences and everything, it like gave me the itch again, and
it lit your fire, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So then I came back and had a great time training, and then Mark came out and hung out at the race all weekend, so that was a blast. But being there and getting to hear those stories, you know, you've experienced so many things, from the training you've done to, you know, Mark being a Navy SEAL and you guys being involved in SEAL Fit and you actually going through SEAL Fit. So I think it'd be cool to kind of go back to, at some point, wherever you think you want to start, and kind of walk through your history. And then we'll get to kind of where your passion has led you, and now from the holistic and the nutrition side, and share that, because you're launching your business. And I think it'd be a great way for people to learn about you and maybe connect with you.
Excellent. Sounds good. So I kind of want to go back to I'm going to go way back, because I recently realized my purpose in life. And I think I knew it from like when I was 5 years old, but I never tapped into it. Basically, I had grandma and great grandma that had Alzheimer's, and watching them live through it and thinking to myself, I'm like, there's got to be a cure for this. There's got to be, it's got to be something that we're doing in our life that's creating this. And at a small age, I just had this drive and this desire to figure that out. And so fast forward, my grandma's passed away at very, I'm going to say like mid 90s. So they had a long life. Just the last, quarter of it, they had no cognitive awareness of it, which made me very sad. But then I dealt with some cancer in my family. My stepdad had pancreatic cancer, and once he was diagnosed, it was a quick year that he was around. And again, at that time, Chris, I was like, it's got to be something that we eat, because he had no cancer genes or no cancer in his family. Nobody had died from it. Nobody was diagnosed with it. So it just drove me to try and like, what's happening? This makes no sense. And we spend so much money at like these different races and trying to donate. And why isn't there a cure? So I, at that point, wondered, okay, it's exercise, because he was more of like a weekend warrior, a hunter, and rode horses, but never really fully like actively stimulated heart and lungs to get heart rate up high. So I dove headfirst into being a personal trainer. So from the time I was 30, well, for 20 years, I had a personal training business, and got the bug because I was living in Coeur d'Alene, and they had the first year Ironman Coeur d'Alene event. And I volunteered at Body Marking, which meet some like hot looking guys there. I was single at the time. And that was pretty amazing. No reason to get up at 5 a.m., but certainly I was up at 5 a.m. so I could write numbers on bodies. And then I volunteered at one of the aid stations on the run course, and just the energy and the passion and the drive and the desire just hit me hard. And it's like, okay, I got to do this.
Yeah. So at that point you hadn't done any triathlon really.
I just ran.
That was your background, was kind of running.
Yep. I was, and growing up, I lived in Florida and Idaho part-time. And so I was a water rat in the ocean, and then I rode horses. So really no athletic, high school athletics I didn't do. So by the time I hit 30, I was like, I got to do something, because A, I want to prevent disease, and B, like, these people are living life. Like, even though they're suffering, I got proposed to, I got asked out on dates by male athletes. And it's like, okay, if they can dig that hard, well, I certainly can too. I mean, this is pretty amazing. So being me, I'm the person that I started at minis. I started at the sprint distance and graduated fully going through Olympic distance. Before I did my first Ironman, I rode my bike 200 miles in the Pacific Northwest in one day.
Oh, wow.
And that was pretty amazing. And once I did that, I knew I could do Ironman. So then I signed up for Ironman Canada, which was at that time up in Penticton. And I have to say, I had the best day. Like out there, the training and stuff like that, that's all fun, but race day, let me get on my bike for 5.5 hours and I will do this forever. All right. That's my gut of all three. Yeah. Of all three events, that's where I thrive.
Yeah.
So Ironman was, I think the longer I went in a race or like riding 200 miles, the stronger I felt.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. See, the longer I went, the more I wanted to get off the bike.
Well, I'm not going to say I did 6 Ironman. So there wasn't Ironman Hawaii. I wanted off my bike and never want to see it again.
Oh, just the wind.
Oh my gosh, it was brutal and it was hot. But I was there. And then my last Ironman, I knew I was done, and I hung up my bike, and I was so grateful for being able to do it. So
now when you did I remember talking to Mark about doing a marathon. Was that marathon after you were done with Ironman? Or was there a marathon, or was it the marathon in the Ironman where you really significantly reduced your time? I thought that was...
It was a marathon. So in my Ironman marathons, I could not break 4 hours. And I had done some open marathons because I did steps to progress to make sure I compete at an Ironman level, because I didn't want to just do it. I wanted to compete. So I had previously done some open marathons, marathon Rock and Roll Arizona a couple times, and I couldn't break 340. I couldn't break 340. And I was like, okay, this is my time. And then it was 2009 where, okay, I want to break. It was after my last Ironman, and my goal now was to break 340 and an open marathon. And I signed up for California International, and all my events that I've ever done, my most favorite is a point to point, because it's like you can check the check mark off.
Exactly.
You're not looping around. It's not Groundhog Day. You get to check it off and you just get to keep going. And so Sacramento International is a point to point.
Yeah, I've always heard that's an amazing race.
It was fabulous. It has undulations, which I love running. Well, at the time I trained in the Pacific Northwest in Idaho. And so we were always running in mountains. So I loved running in mountains, and there was enough undulations in the race to keep my body challenged in which muscles it was recruiting. So I went into that race, and as a master's athlete, 40 years old, I broke it with a 324 and qualified for Boston.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that was such an amazing day also.
Very cool. So you ended up racing Boston.
I'm not going to say I raced Boston. I ran Boston. I enjoyed every mile of it, but I still had a really great time. And it was more for the experience, because I mean, Boston's the elusive, just like Ironman Hawaii, it's elusive, right. Enjoy it.
And that's kind of my mindset is my goal is to qualify and then run the race just to enjoy the race, not run the race to set any sort of record, just enjoy the atmosphere.
You're gonna do so amazing. I can't wait to watch you and Mark while you do it.
I know. I think Mark's got this in the bag.
Yeah, so do you. You're running really well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
No, well, it's funny just getting advice from you guys, either whether it's nutrition or whether it's, we talked on the phone the other day a little bit, and then Mark on the running side, all those little bits, they all add up.
Yeah. Put them all together. Good.
Yeah. And then what race did you, or how many times did you go to Kona, and what race did you qualify for Kona?
I visited friends as they raced Kona because I wanted to see it. I'm always the person, I have to drive the run course. I have to drive the bike course. I have to know what's coming up. So we went to Hawaii and watched some friends race. And then it was 2008. Well, actually 2007 was my best Ironman. But it did not qualify me for Hawaii because the field was very heavy and some strong ass women. So that year I did a 1046 up in Canada. And then the next year, 2008, I raced Ironman Coeur d'Alene, did not qualify. Then in August, so Ironman Coeur d'Alene was in May or June.
Well, when I did it was in June 2007.
Okay, so maybe it was June in that time of year. And then August went up and raced Ironman Canada and qualified for Hawaii with a 1052.
Nice.
And then went in October and participated in Ironman Hawaii because by that point my body was done. It was so tired. But I was there, and it was a big suffer day for me, but I mean, there are moments in it that are definitely highlighted and I will never forget. And I made it.
Well, I've never been able to do it, never qualified, but I can imagine, it's that mecca of, it's the thing to do, right? So no matter the day or not, you're still in the experience. And so very cool.
Yeah.
So then when you got out of Ironman, you started to, you were doing personal training all along, but at some point you transitioned or got into CrossFit a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's see, Mark got hit. We were training to go back to Ironman Coeur d'Alene in 2011. And then we had an amazing coach, Jeff Cutterback out of Florida, that was coaching us. And we were so strong at the time. And We were out on just a training ride, and Mark got hit by a car while we were out on a ride right in front of me, and his bike hit my bike. We both ended up being okay, but I had no desire to go out on a bike ride. I was just a little traumatized by it, and I just didn't want to be out on the roads. I didn't want to be out doing it by myself because he couldn't ride. He hurt his shoulder.
Yeah. Sometimes I think seeing it is worse than doing it, right? It's like when you see someone else get hit versus him getting hit and hopping up in the experience. Yeah, I'm sure there's some trauma there, but you watched it happen.
Yeah. It was freaky. So at that point, it was like, okay, this isn't fun for me anymore. And being on my bike, which I completely was my passion, I didn't want to be on it anymore. So it was time to hang it up. And a good friend of mine who I actually trained for Ironman Coeur d'Alene, she introduced me to CrossFit up in Coeur d'Alene. And I actually fell in love with it because one of my other passions is lifting weights. The heavier, the stronger I am, the better I feel. And it was amazing, and got Mark into it. And then I ended up getting my level 1 CrossFit cert in 2012.
Okay.
And started coaching at CrossFit Coeur d'Alene. And I ended up closing up my own personal training gym. They'd sold the building, and it was a good transition, a good time for me to go coach for some great guys up in North Idaho, and fell in love with the community and the atmosphere. It was something way different than what I experienced in the triathlon community, where triathlon community, I feel like, we're kind of, we're friendly, but we still size each other up.
Yeah, exactly.
In the CrossFit community, it's so embracing, and the last person finishes gets the most cheers. That's how CrossFit was at the time. And it was such a community and so much fun that we loved it. I loved it.
Yeah. For me, it changed a lot over time, but that beginning, that small start, and that was when I launched the magazine. And around that time, 2011, 2012 is when I got my cert. And yeah, it was small then. It wasn't mainstream yet. It was that family. Yeah. You went to the gym and it was a family there. So
yeah, it was pretty great.
Yeah. Now, were you doing Olympic lifting? That was one of your, no?
No, I wasn't Olympic lifting, only in and any workouts that it was needed. I was coming from an endurance background, remember? So any event like Murph or like 31 Heroes, my jam, man, the longer the better.
Yeah, exactly.
Throw in those short, fast sprints. Oh my gosh, I was dying. But over time, it's interesting. So I did CrossFit from 2011 to 2017. And over time, my endurance declined and my sprint increased, but so did my strength to power too. And what I fell in love with was clean and jerk. Mm-hmm. And once Mark and I moved down here to Southern California, I found a CrossFit gym, and one of the coaches, owners there, Jason, he was coached by Mike Bergner, the guru of Olympic weightlifting. Yep. And he had a passion to coach Olympic weightlifting. And that's when I dove in and let CrossFit go, because I interesting enough, Chris, just fast forward a little bit. I had my genetics, my DNA tested, and my DNA says I like this. I'm elite at endurance and I'm elite at power. So give me either one or and my body will just adapt to it. Yep. So I think that's how I've been able to go from the endurance world then now to the strength training. So I jumped into Olympic weightlifting for 2 years. And
that's what I think I was remembering. Yeah, there was some transition in there where you transitioned more into Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah. Yep. 2 years solid Olympic weightlifting, and made it to the national level in Las Vegas and competed in the Open Masters division at 59 kilo. and won my age group.
Wow.
Won my weight class,
That's awesome.
my age group.
Man.
Yeah. Thanks to my clean and jerk. Now the snatch, on the other hand, that's still just an element of each time it changes. And, but the clean and jerk, it was more weight, the better.
Yeah. I swear I don't have the shoulder mobility for the snatch. I'm going to blame it that.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's always my weak point. So, well then, fast forward a little bit. Obviously, I mean, I don't know how long there was. Was there a point where you got out of CrossFit and started to do more endurance again, or was Trans Rockies just kind of your getting back into it because it was your epic 50?
Trans Rockies was my epic 50. So now remember, I went from within the CrossFit area. I did the SEAL Fit.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, that we'll dive back to that in a moment. But I did the SEAL Fit within the CrossFit timeframe, and then I stopped CrossFit and I stopped any hardcore cardiovascular. I mean, it was just weightlifting, lifting, get heavy, get strong, and so I had no lung cardiovascular ability after weightlifting. So I told Mark, I'm like, I have a desire to be in the woods. I have spent 2 years in the gym. I want to be out in the woods. I want to be out in nature. I want to run again. I want to trail run because I love trail running. It's just so peaceful and serene. And my epic 50 was Trans Rockies. So I started from ground zero running again and worked up to being able to do 6 days of running.
Yeah, that's incredible. I remember there was a story you told where you guys decided, did you try and do an overnighter, or you were going to do, I don't know what it was. Was it a point to point? But all I remember is that it didn't go as planned.
Well, that was in the SEAL Fit, my little SEAL Fit stint.
Okay.
Yeah. So once we moved down here to Southern California, side note, I wanted to get out of the Pacific Northwest because I wanted the ocean and the sunshine back. I spent 30 years up there living in gray and fog, and I needed some vitamin D and sunshine. So we moved down to Southern California and lived on our boat for 3 years. And during that time, I hadn't found a CrossFit down here that I really liked. So we jumped into SEAL Fit, and Mark knows the owner, and we would go down to SEAL Fit in Encinitas, and I learned of because he also had US CrossFit.
Okay.
And so I learned of his SEAL Fit program. He had the 50-hour crucible, and then the 20X, which was a 12 to 14-hour crucible. And I know myself well enough that I don't do well on lack of sleep, and I don't do well on being cold. So the 50-hour was not my gig, and I did not feel the desire to push myself there. But the 12 to 14-hour, the 20X, yeah, I could do that jam. That was easy. So Mark and I, at that point, trained for an overnight. It was more of a hike. It was like one of their challenges that they did monthly. And so we did a 24-hour hike up in Big Bear on the PCT. And if you go hiking with Mark, you will never be on a trail. It's most generally the path least followed or no path at all.
You're bushwhacking the whole time?
Oh, yeah. So early on, I learned that. And, it's an adventure and it's fun. And that just stimulates me. So let's go for it. And we ended up doing this crazy around Big Bear. And I'm not sure if he told you the whole story, but ended up in this dry lake bed and ended up sleeping for a couple hours in the car, and then went back, got coffee from Starbucks, and back out on the trail.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I remember there was a stint where it's like, you know what, let's go to the car.
I mean, because there is no prize other than the fact that how many miles could we do in 24 hours? Yeah. So that was in the SEAL Fit time frame that we did that before I did the 12X crucible that they had out at east of Temecula.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's probably a good potentially group of people who don't know what SEAL Fit is. We were in CrossFit, so it was very famous there. But I guess give a high level overview of what SEAL Fit was and kind of what that crucible was for you.
Okay. SEAL Fit in general is for people or young men who want to test their feet at learning what BUDS is, basic underwater demolition, going in to be a SEAL team guy. So I know I'm going to get crap for saying that wrong, but it never comes out right. So SEAL Fit will train you. They have an 8-week program. They'll train you so that you can come into this 50-hour crucible or the 12-hour crucible. And it's you do Murph, which is the 2-mile run, the pull-ups, the sit-ups, the squats, and then, 1-mile run on each end.
Okay.
You also, like for me, we went running, we went rucking, hiked in the water. We did litter carry. So you have a boat crew, and it's always the same crew, and you have buddy, and you're accountable for each other, making sure that through it together. And so we did litter carries. We got in the water early on and got wet to make us cold and miserable, which I was okay because I had a great boat crew. They piled on top of me and got me warm. And
which always looked like the most miserable part. It's like, okay, let's get you wet. Let's get you sandy. Now let's do all the work.
I was actually laughing during the day. I was laughing. I'm like, okay, this is fun. And this is funny because we had to do armless burpees in the mud. So imagine putting your arms behind your back and trying to do a burpee and then getting up. I mean, I was laughing. But at one point we had to take this buoy of logs that we attached to each other. There's probably like 6 logs, and we had to swim them across the river in a pseudo mock saving a helicopter pilot on the other side of the lake. Well, that didn't go very well. One of the instructors had to get into the water and put his fins on and help us move this log jam buoy. That was very hard. But still it was daylight and it was fine. But for me, once it got to nighttime and we kept having to get cold in and out of the water, and we had to go underneath the water and hold our breath underwater, come out, get sandy. And then we were running through the grass with logs, and they were spraying us with the hose in the water. And that's when it became very hard for me because just being cold.
Right.
It was, if not for my friends and my boat crew getting us all together at different points of the day, just encouraging each other. If it wasn't for each other, I mean, that's where you have that camaraderie.
Yeah, that team building experience.
Exactly. I mean, we're still friends now, and it's pretty great. So the 50-hour crucible goes into that same experience, but over a lot longer time frame. They're in and out of the ocean. They're doing, surf training. It's a lot more.
The 12 sounds brutal enough.
Yeah, it was, I was glad to be done. I was very cold, but I was happy that, hey, I survived. And I actually genuinely had a great time doing it.
Yeah, it's a huge sense of accomplishment, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So that was in our, before we found a CrossFit here in Southern California phase, and then hit the weightlifting and then Trans Rockies.
Yeah. So now obviously you've all along, you've always been very interested in health and fitness, but at some point you made this decision that you wanted to go down kind of the holistic path and the nutrition path, and kind of, I guess, let's go through some of that so we can talk about kind of where you're headed.
Yeah, that interesting, like still back to my purpose is like going through that SEAL Fit. Mark Devine talked about like, what's your purpose, and trying to get you to figure that out. Still never figured that out. But I had a friend of mine that I met at CrossFit that she was, her name's Jess. She was starting a program called Nutritional Therapy Association. And I asked her about it, and what she was telling me, Chris, just lit my soul on fire. I was so fascinated. And at any point over time, I had some good friends that would talk about nutrition or talk about the benefits of this, that, and the other, of what they were consuming in their body and how it had affected their body. And I mean, I could listen to them for hours and hours and hours. I mean, it just fascinated me. So once Jess started the Nutritional Therapy Association, it's a 9-month program and it's very intensive. I would talk to her. I'm like, okay, what are you learning now? What are you learning now? And finally, I was so excited for her, but also so excited that this is what I wanted to do, because this is going to get to my understanding of why do we have Alzheimer's? Why do we have cancer? My dad was going through COPD at the time. And it's like taking control of our own health and taking control of our own destiny instead of putting our faith in doctors. And so how could I control the outcome of my own self?
Right.
So that's when I started the Nutritional Therapy Association, and I fell in love. And I mean, it completely changed how Mark and I eat, how I cook. I mean, it's not to say like we're perfect. Last night we just had pizza, but I mean, it's in moderation, and understanding that if you have a gluten intolerance, or if you have brain fog, or if you're constantly tired, that these are symptoms that your amazing body can tell you that it's having problems with. I mean, these are symptoms that most of the time we'll get a drug or a pill to mask the symptoms. But my curiosity is what's causing the symptoms?
I thought it was just telling me to drink more coffee.
Yes, no, or have Pop-Tarts first thing in the morning,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Have Pop-Tarts. Yes. Yeah. That was my question to ask you, is at what point in a run is it long enough to have a Pop-Tart?
I still haven't come up with that answer yet.
I figured if I figured if it was anything more than a mile, then I was good to go.
Yeah. No, maybe you just might want to eliminate them. Yeah.
Eliminate them. Wow.
Yeah, possibly. But there's so much that our body tells us. We just need to listen to it. Yeah. I mean, it gives us mood swings and inflammation. And I mean, what is that caused from? Is it caused from what we're eating? Is it caused from toxins that we're cleaning in our house? Is it caused from what we're putting simple on our skin, lotions and whatnot? So, or simple enough, not getting enough water.
Right.
So that's when it's interesting how, if we pay attention to our intuition and how our path guides us, because remember, I went from 5 years old to wondering to, by the time I was 30, my stepdad dying of cancer. Now my dad had COPD, and granted that's from smoking, but also like, how could he, increase the longevity of what he does have by what we're eating? And so finally I realized that this is my purpose, like to keep going down that path, because the idea of exercising, what I was doing of over exercising, wasn't the cure, because I constantly was struggling with some issue, especially inflammation. It's the combination of all of it, and what does our body as individuals require? So you're completely different than I am. Mark's completely different than I am. But there are some basics that we should have as a foundation. And that's eating whole foods and that are nutrient dense that God's provided us.
Right. Yeah. Starting there. And then I think that's part of the thing that people don't necessarily want to put that work in, because it's not necessarily easy, right? You can start with, like you said, whole foods, lean proteins, clean foods, but then there isn't just one formula. It's making those adjustments in that process, trying to figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you, how many calories you need based on what you're doing. And it is a process.
It's definitely a journey, and different stages in our life require our bodies to have different things too. I'm finding at 50 years old, I know I need to work out. I mean, being home now every day that we are in a little isolation, that I can't just sit around,
right?
As most people can't, but my body requires me to work out. And it also, you're different yourself because you're doing all this training. So Chris, what does your body need? And then the same with another 50-year-old female, what?
Pop-Tarts, by the way.
Yes. I'm going to find a healthy Pop-Tart recipe for you. I'm not joking.
I honestly don't eat that many Pop-Tarts. I eat Pop-Tarts when I race 24-hour races. That's my go-to. It's that thing, that comfort food. But otherwise, I'm not eating Pop-Tarts during the week.
Yeah, I think that's moderation, right?
Yeah.
Won't we call that moderation?
I mean, the only reason I do long endurance events is to be able to eat just crap for 24 to 72 hours.
Yeah. I can remember some of those aid stations at Trans Rockies having all that sweet stuff. But
yes.
But in longevity of life, how long do you want to live? And we have the ability to, it's called epigenetics, to express what genes are turned on within ourselves and what genes are not by what we eat, by how we live with stress or no stress, how we deal with stress, sleep or not enough sleep, and what kind of toxins that we're exposing ourselves to, by what we're putting on our skin or cleaning our floors with, or simple washing our clothes in because they're on our skin, we're breathing them. And I mean, so many things that can determine how your genes are expressed.
Right. I think one of the things I get a lot is I'm always asked, what supplements am I taking? Right. That's I swear that's a question every couple of weeks. What supplements am I taking? And I always try and start back to what is your diet like first, right? And then if you can get as much there, then what supplements should I be adding in? But it seems, the magic bullet, what are you taking to help? So that's one thing, because a lot of the listeners here are going to be endurance athletes or people that are looking to do distance, and kind of get an idea from your standpoint as to, once you've got the whole foods, right? The fruits, the vegetables, you're eating well. What supplements do you look at as being important?
Two quotes I really like. You can't out supplement a poor diet, and you can't out train a poor diet.
Yep.
So with supplements, I mean, there's some basics. What I'm completely learning, I have two mentors. They're actually my naturopaths up in North Idaho, Dr. Jerry Bailey and Pam Langendorfer. Everything starts in the gut. Your brain health starts in the gut. Your hormones starts in the gut. And going back to that supplement question, Chris, is that you have to make sure that your gut and your digestive system is able to digest the foods that you're giving it, whether it be a supplement or whether it be a whole food. So if you have some underlying gut issues, I mean, no supplement is going to cure that. But if you're eating healthy and you're feeling good and you don't have those symptoms that I talked about, like brain fog or excessive fatigue or inflammation, then I think just some simple, my go-to or biotic research, which I can provide people with a multivitamin, definitely your omega 369, your fish oil, that helps with the inflammation. Right now, with what we're going through, vitamin D, vitamin C, that's helped with the immune system. Mm-hmm. And also, I've really gotten turned on to some lion's mane mushrooms. That helps with the immune system also. And like for men, zinc helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I take zinc and magnesium.
Yep, magnesium definitely is a must. That completely changed the way Mark felt with the inflammation he had in his body. He takes it twice a day. It also helps with sleep. I think those are pretty much the basics. A probiotic and a prebiotic also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Actually, just purchased a probiotic.
Yeah, good. And again, you could go down the rabbit hole of probiotics, which you need and which you don't. There's so many billions of strands, but I think a good clean one, you have to be careful. You can't get your supplements from the mega stores because there's no regulation on supplements.
I just can't buy the cheapest one on Amazon.
No, sir. No, because there's no regulation. Nobody's making sure that A, you're getting magnesium in there, or B, where it's coming from, or is there what they say the amount in that capsule?
Right. And that's the hardest part, I think, for the everyday person, myself included, is knowing the difference between this magnesium and this one, or this probiotic or this protein, right? I mean, it's typically, at least it's how many reviews does it have and what's the marketing, right? That's really what's selling you and trying to figure out. So I think that's why working with someone like yourself that actually knows what these labels mean and what is inside these products is important.
Yes, absolutely. We did a whole chapter on just like label reading, what some of the things are. I still don't know what some of the ingredients are. Basically, if you look at a label and you can't pronounce the ingredient, you don't want it because that's more or less a chemical. But I do have access to some really good supplements through Designs for Health or Biotics Research. Those are the top brands that I recommend. But on my website, I do have like access to, if you're one of my clients, to Full Script, where we can do some dialing in of symptoms that you have, and then recommend a supplement specifically for you based on, one of the symptoms and kind of work together on if that is the correct supplement along with the correct eating program.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess, is there a specific group of people you're targeting? Is it women versus men, athletes versus elderly or older? What is, when you look at, is there a certain area you tend to want to target?
I am targeting, I want to help everybody. That's where my passion is. I want to help everybody, but knowing that that's not possible, I'll take on any client, but my niche is, I have hypothyroidism. I'm very familiar with that. Over exerciser. I've been on the verge of Hashimoto's. I'm perimenopausal. So coming into menopause, I know what all those symptoms are and what helps and what doesn't. And also being an empty nester at 45 years old, and understanding that so much of our digestive issues that we have, Chris, are from stress in our lifestyle and lack of sleep. So if you're stressed out with your job, or if you're stressed out with your spouse, understanding how to be an empty nester now that you have 2 kids who are now grown, and how do you relate with your wife or your husband anymore, and come together to create now your next journey or your next chapter. So my niche is, I have all that experience, 45 plus empty nesters, soon to be perimenopausal females, but I love working with athletes too, because I have done that for 20 years.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the things it's funny, over time I've started to feel like is there's so much, like you're saying, there's so much more than just cutting the calories, right? I want to lose weight. I want to, it almost roots back. I've started to realize it roots back so much deeper than that. And it is very hormonal in a sense, that it's, the cravings, the things like that, it's not just that I'm overeating. There's deeper reasons there, or that your hormones are driving a lot of these issues that I never really looked at that way in the past.
Yeah, it's fascinating to understand that going through the non-fat generation, that we were told not to eat fat, when healthy fat, avocados and olive oil, are so beneficial for our brain function and so beneficial for our hormones to function correctly. And it's getting enough of that in each day. I know I find myself sitting here now at home, I'm not eating enough. I'll go hours without eating and then realize, oh my gosh, why am I sitting here? I'm so tired. My brain's so foggy. Oh, I haven't eaten in 6 hours. Yeah.
See, you've got that trait like my wife. If I need to be busy, otherwise, if I'm here working at home, I'm sitting here, it's like, pantry's right there. I need something to eat. So I'm the exact opposite.
Yeah. Understanding that what we eat affects our hormones, but also I know that you started meditation too. And I am so glad you did that, because when it comes down to racing to qualify for Boston, it's such a mindset, because you cannot train anymore. Your body knows exactly what to do. now it comes down to nutrition and your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the big reasons I think looking at some of these different avenues, meditation being one, is I've probably in the last 8 or 9 months, I've started to struggle with sleep, not being able to fall asleep or stay asleep. And I'll have caffeine in the morning, coffee, things like that, but I've become aware of trying to kind of shut that down after lunchtime. But that still doesn't seem to be the answer there. So I'm still trying to figure out why. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's just not being able to turn the brain off and just fall asleep. So then I end up in that cycle of being stressed that I'm not falling asleep. And
it's a vicious cycle.
And 4 a.m. is now it's only 3 hours away, and now it's only 2 hours away. So so that's the rabbit hole I'm down now, is trying to figure out how to solve this, my sleep issues.
I totally understand. I've definitely been in that stress zone where that whole perpetual cycle of, oh my gosh, I have 6 hours. Oh my gosh, I'm only gonna get 4 hours. Oh my gosh. And you're still awake. And then the next day you're just walking around like a zombie. And for me, I don't like myself when I don't have enough sleep. I don't like being around myself. So why would anybody else? So it's very important to me to get enough sleep. And Mark knows that and understands that. So I've created such a sleep ritual that the phone gets put away by 8 p.m. or if not sooner. The computer shut off by 8 p.m. And then it's creating this pattern and this ritual of, okay, wash my face or take a shower, brush my teeth. Hopefully we're all doing that at night. And I take my magnesium at night and then get into bed, and I will put on my headset like we have on now, and I'll do a guided meditation, and sure enough, sleep like a baby.
Yeah, I think that's the next step for me, is trying something like that, turning something on and listening to it and kind of going through that guided meditation or something along those lines. Otherwise, reading will probably work wonders, because if I start reading anything within 5 minutes, I'm falling asleep. It could be in the middle of the day.
Yeah, that's funny. It's just creating something that's going to work for you, Chris, and just sticking with that and creating that pattern. I mean, like, you remember when the girls were little and they were babies, like, you had to create a pattern for them, as you do now, of what their day and how, like, when they're babies, how that sleep cycle works.
Right.
So it's the same thing. I mean, we still need our sleep, and we still need to create that pattern and what's going to work for us. And, is it lavender on your pillow? And that triggers the brain that, oh, it's sleep time. Or is it just, something as simple as putting the headset in and listening to a guided meditation?
Yeah. The other thing I think I need to get out of the habit of is, because I use my phone as my alarm, I tend to, when I do wake up, I tap on the screen to see what time it is. And it's now 10:45 at night. It feels like it's 4 a.m., but it's only 10:45. And what happens is you see any of those messages that have come through, right? Somebody on Instagram left a comment, or some Gmail came through, whatever it is, right? And I see what time it is, and now it's really hard to not want to see what that notification is.
You've been sucked down the hole.
Yep. So now it's like
two tricks. I've put Mark's alarm clock phone across the room, because A, it eliminates some of those EMFs, but B, I mean, that isn't that quick, easy access to get to it. It's across the room. I'm not going to get out of bed to go look at it. Or you can put the do not disturb on your phone from 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. till whatever time you wake up.
Well, it's definitely, I definitely have that. It's not buzzing and waking me up. But when you touch it, you see what I need to do is just turn off all notifications, is what I really need to do, or put it across the room.
Yeah.
But then then I get to deal with the wife. It takes me 20 seconds to get over there. Or I just need to go back to an old school alarm clock is really probably the solution.
Exactly. Yeah. We have one of those also. Yeah, for
sure. Stop using the phone for everything.
Yeah, I know. We're addicted.
Yeah. Well, where can people, if they want to get in contact with you, where can they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
Chris, I am on Instagram at Hot4Holistics. I'm on Facebook, Hot4Holistics. And my website is Hot4Holistics.
It's all the same.
All the same. Pretty simple.
Perfect. Well, I'll put that below. And I mean, if someone's interested in working on nutrition or any of these issues, talking about some of the symptoms they have, just reach out to you.
Reach out to me. I have a 15-minute discovery call where it's free. We talk about I'll ask you some questions, what your answers are, where you see yourself, what your goals are, and then we can go from there. I am starting May 1st. Sign up is by April 30th, a 28-day nutritional reboot. Basically what it is 4 weeks of, I have guided handouts. I have goals for each week. And it's going to help with inflammation, some simple fixes for digestive health, some sleep strategies like what we talked about. Perfect. But it's a group camaraderie where we'll have a little private Facebook page and check-ins, Zoom calls, and it's just to get to the basics and get started, that praying that we are able to get out and about by May 1st. But also it's really simple enough, the program, to where what we're getting at the grocery store now, we're not looking for anything fancy. It's right. Just your basic staples. So I have a couple options that if anybody wants a discovery call or to sign up for the 28-day nutritional reboot, or I do one-on-one also.
Perfect. Well, then what I'll do is I'll include all of that in the show notes and on my website so that people can reach out to you.
I appreciate it.
And get to know you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, this was awesome. It's been so fun to connect. We have been trying to connect in person.
Yeah.
And we need to do that before, I think we have to do this before the lockdown. We'll keep 6 feet away, but we're going to have to do it because soon after that, you're going to be gone.
Yep. Moving to Costa Rica. I can't wait.
You're going to be so life.
Yeah, but
you're just be coming down there.
Yeah, you'll have a place to come visit. So exactly. Works for you.
I'm going to have to come down. We're going to have to work on videos and, it's going to be a work thing. It's definitely a business trip.
On the beach, next to the ocean, maybe a couple margaritas in hand, because It's moderation.
It is moderation.
And we'll do yoga.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Vicki. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you also.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon. And everyone, this is it for this week. If you want to reach out to Vicki, I will have her contact information below, or reach out to me and I can put you in contact with her. But otherwise, we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.